Welcome back to another episode of It's Data Habibi. My name is Ivan. I'm the Senior Data Scientist at HEMOdata. In this podcast, we're exploring the world of data across AI, loyalty, customer engagement, basically the A to Z of the data ecosystem. In the last two episodes, we explored loyalty. For the next few episodes, we're shifting our focus to AI. So with me today, I have Vitalii Duk, the founder of Dynamiq, and Luke Cann, the founder of HEMOdata. So Vitalii, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, so I'm Vitalii, founder and CEO at Dynamiq. I've been doing data science, machine learning for the past 11 years now. Spent past 9 years here in the region, and I've worked with companies like Dubizzle and Kareem, building data science and machine learning solutions out there. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Luke?
Hi, I'm Luke Cann. I'm co-founder and CEO of HEMOdata. We are an AI and data consultancy, and previous to starting HEMOdata, I was a consultant for Emirates, Walgreens Boots, Amex, delivering various transformational projects for some of those large brands.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about AI, agentic AI, and where the shift is going. So most people, when they think AI, they think that AI is simply just chatbots, but we've seen this new wave of AI that it's more than that, and it now plans, it decides, and it acts. So in this episode of Data Habibi, we're going to dive into agentic AI, what it is, how it works, and where it will reshape the future of business. Okay, so let's start off with Agentic 101. If you had to explain agentic AI to someone, how would you explain it?
I guess, first of all, agentic AI or agents, it's not a new concept. It's been there for quite some time, since probably like 60s, 70s. It's just we didn't have LLMs to power them. But now, if we were to simplify this, you have some decision engine, which is an LLM in this case, that can reason, it can plan, and it can act. So it can call some external tools, get the feedback or output out of these, and then kind of repeat the cycle again, like do another set of reasoning, planning, and acting based on that feedback. So it's more or less like an autonomous system that can take a complex task, break it down into subtasks, execute external tools to basically fulfill some of the requirements in the task, and then repeat that over and over in more or less autonomous way. And then in modern days, we have LLMs as the brain of that agentic system. So LLMs basically used as the core engine there.
So how does that then differ from traditional chatbot systems that we are mostly familiar with these days versus, let's say, old school predictive models? Like how are we able to distinguish what's happening on an agentic level versus like a traditional machine learning sense?
So I think chatbots, by their nature, they're more conversational. So we have a conversation similar to how you would have it with the other human, and it's kind of tailored and focused on giving you the textual response. AI agents are broader than that. They're not always conversational. They can be working as in a back office setting where there's no traditional textual output to it. So it's much more generalized concept, I would say. And of course, traditional ML is something that's been there, or traditional AI models that have been there for many years. They don't kind of change fundamentally. They can be used again as part of this agentic system. They can be used as tools because there might be an AI agent that can defer some of the tasks to a linear regression model or something like that, where LLMs are not good at computational tasks that are required to perform, let's say, some predictions.
And I think, to even take that step back further from the customers that we speak to day to day, and maybe some of the people in the business who, they might have heard the term agentic, but they don't know necessarily how it would apply. And so, think about it, if that junior assistant is able to take some of those, repeatable processes, handle those, but also kind of apply thought and logic to that as well, so that you're getting some of that workload taken off, and that workflow automated. So, a step beyond just simple automation, it's actually adding thought processes into the mix as well.
Do you
Yeah.
think that there is a misunderstanding in terms of what kind of complexity agentic AI can actually solve versus the ideal use cases for them? How would we be able to identify what is a good use case for agentic versus what is something that just requires a simple workflow? How do we distinguish that?
Well, I think that's a really good point, because and I'll let you jump in a minute, because it's something we were just talking about, is that a lot of the customers that we're working with, and they've latched on to AI as the buzzword. They're not properly thinking about, actually, how do we apply this in a way that delivers us value. It's that AI for AI's sake. And one of the things, to if you really want to get the value from agentic processes, or any AI solution or any technology solution, is, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And if you focus on that goal, then you're able to go through the process of understanding, okay, what is the right tool? What do I need to enable that tool? And you can start to work through the steps. And so, obviously, that's where we're seeing a lot of education with our customers, to be able to walk them through those steps to get to the right value point.
No, you're right. I think the market these days still requires education, and the whole thing around agentic AI is still quite early. So there's not a lot of clarity on how it can work. But like, if we kind of take a step back, so a lot of companies as well, they position agentic AI as almost like autonomous AI employees, to the point that Luke made. So you can think about AI agents in this kind of fashion, which I don't really like, but you can think them as very, very junior autonomous AI employees. And then when it comes to kind of deciding when to use a predetermined workflow and when to use AI agents, I think it's quite simple. So if your business process doesn't have a lot of variability, so it's pretty standardized, doesn't have too many if else or other types of logical decisions to be made, then there's no point to introduce agentic AI, because it's still prone to errors. The core thing is that it's not deterministic, so you cannot guarantee that, in 100 times out of 100, it's going to be doing exactly the same set of steps. AI agents, because they are powered by LLMs, which are non-deterministic and they're prone to hallucinations, they can still decide on its own, and sometimes they can make mistakes. So agentic AI is needed when the business processes are complex, and it's very hard to program every single if condition or logical decision that should be made at every step. That's where you kind of leverage the power of AI and LLMs to defer that to them. So you don't need to program that. They basically already have a lot of knowledge incorporated in them, and they can decide based on the instructions you've given them how to deal with certain use case.
It's interesting you mentioned the process, because I think at HEMOdata, one of the things that we focus on the most is this process, and the steps that organizations or our customers need to take, where one of the things we focus on is AI readiness. How do you think that process has to change now that AI or agentic AI systems have come into place, that customers need to react correctly so that they can include these agentic systems? How do we differentiate traditional data processing standards and practices versus like an AI readiness process?
So I think when we're going through it, it's, there's a lot of change happening at the minute, and there's a lot of people trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I think we can try and drive that again, the value. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And it goes back to almost some of the the basics of any technology deployment in having, what is the business case? Am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I clear on what it is that I want to achieve? And if we're clear on that, we go through the steps, we can make sure that we have the right data assets, right? And what we're able to use to be able to feed into the model, because we could have the best idea and the best application for an AI use case. But if we don't have the right data, or we don't understand our data that we have as an organization, then again, how do we manage that? And I think that's probably some of the biggest challenges that organizations are facing at the minute, is still that lack of understanding of the data assets that they have and the quality of that data to be able to enable some of these AI use cases. So putting the controls and the governance and the framework in place, and managing that on an ongoing basis, is going to be giving you that better outcome from the goals that you are setting your agentic AI to be able to achieve. And again, it's still a developing area for a lot of organizations, and they're trying to jump in at the AI use case side without going through kind of a lot of that pre-prep work and consideration stage that needs to be thought about.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think there's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So, in most of the AI systems, even in the pre-LLM era, you need to make sure you have the right data that is structured, pre-processed, clean, validated, which will create this foundation for all your AI efforts. Because otherwise, you might build something, but it's just not working. But on the other side, there are some cases where maybe this is a bit less relevant. So, for example, if you want to roll out an AI agent that helps you to do like a deep research, something like what ChatGPT has, like a deep research agent that just helps you to find information faster. This is something you can probably start rolling out tomorrow across your org. And I believe that these days organizations need to make sure that their employees have access to all these tools that can help them write, create documents, do the research faster, which probably doesn't require for you to have like a data warehouse and things like that. But like if you want to start automating some of the business processes, that will take in account your corporate data, then of course you need to make sure that data is structured, it's clean, there's some data lineage and other things. So you ensure that it's the outputs that AI is generating, it's actually valid.
Yeah, and it's actually a really good point, that conversation between, where as an organization are you looking for those individual productivity improvements, like say being able to find questions and answers to maybe what's your HR policy and things like that, the research side of it. What are those use cases within the business that are relevant to the individual, and then what are those use cases that are relevant to the entire business process? And I think that's an important distinction to make. I think, like as you say, it's a lot easier to get to those individual use cases over and above those extended, more complex business processes.
It's interesting you should say this, because I feel like we're moving from an era where we're seeing AI as a tool more as AI as a teammate. What do you think this means in terms of a shift in practice on how organizations will start to work now that we can leverage these agents as working members of the team rather than a tool we subscribe to?
I think we're still not there. There's a lot of movement around this topic. A lot of new companies being created that actually position themselves as your AI employees. I think it's gonna come over time, but we still don't know how exactly that's gonna work. So many things to figure out, like from data residency standpoint, because if you're an AI employee, if you're a UAE company that needs to comply with local regulations, and your AI employee is sitting in the US, might not be something that everyone will subscribe to. So I think we'll still figure out like what are the changes that companies need to undergo. Right now, I think it's too early to say how the organizations of the future will look like. I think it's better to focus on the more short-term capabilities, because again, the promise of AI employees will depend on AGI or like much more advanced AI models, which we don't know when and if they will come at all. So we need to work off the expectation that the model is going to be maybe slightly better than they are today, and we're just building maybe not full AI employees, but like some agentic workflows that automate certain business processes, and think of that a bit more like what we've done with like a classic RPA, right? Like robotic process automation tools and things like that. But now, so floating more and more complex tasks to these.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, and I think also back to the previous point of understanding what you want it to do, what you want the employee to do. So that employee, what is their role, what is their function? Your point about data residency, yeah, perfect. In some industries, in some organizations, you have to have those people in country performing that role, and the data that they generate has to be constrained by those data residency concerns, and that's no different from the AI employee. Um, and so you're right, as things progress, those capabilities will improve, but we still have to think how we're governing and managing those AI employees, just as we would human employees. It's still our responsibility. There still has to be a task and a purpose. And if we go back to that kind of personal productivity versus enterprise business process productivity conversation, for me, I think one of the biggest advantages of having that kind of AI buddy is almost like as a sounding board. Individually, I can sound off some ideas, and it might not be the perfect result, but it's just given me something that's led to another thought that actually then you can apply. As you say, I think there's a long way to go in being able to kind of apply that independently across kind of particularly more complex workflows within businesses. But it is certainly getting there and will likely be there very quickly.
I think probably one point we talked about earlier is you still need to have all your processes documented. I think that's the foundation. It doesn't matter if you're hiring a human and they need to join today and start performing some tasks. You need to tell them what they need to do, how you do work here in this company. Same for like AI, agentic workflows. You need to have things documented. You need to know exactly what needs to perform and what sequence, or what's the outcome, what's the expected outcome. Same thing here. Like you need to have a solid data foundation, like make sure that data is available, the systems are interconnected as well, whatever you're using internally, like it should be interconnected, should be available, should be a good data layer, and then the processes should be documented. I think that should be enough for a majority of like agentic systems.
Yeah, and even I think, when we're working with companies where that documentation is perhaps a little bit lacking, right? There's always been, I think, a hesitation to be able to, for some companies and businesses wanting to go out and do that documentation, have that documentation in place. But now we are getting to those AI use cases, and CTOs are thinking about actually how they can incorporate AI into their businesses. Actually going back and doing that homework and having some of these things that you would expect should be in place is extremely important when you're looking at these AI use cases. So it's back to having your homework, better understanding the processes, which processes lend themselves better to some of the AI use cases, and ultimately that's going to lead to getting better return on your investment at the end of that process as well. So yeah, I think it's a very good point.
I think one of the things we should consider, though, by the sounds of it, companies shouldn't necessarily approach the most complex processes or the most complex use case first. I actually see this succeeding in a world where we identify smaller, simpler use cases first, and then we almost create like a mesh of agentic processes. Because if I can trigger all of these smaller individual ones, that gives me the ability to slowly build out the entire architecture of an agentic employee. Because as you mentioned, if I'm going to hire a new employee, and drop them into our ecosystem day one, they might specialize in one type of task. So it almost makes sense when we're building out these processes. Let's start small and slowly scale up. So, how do you think it would be best for companies to tackle this, and when are they aware that, hey, I should actually start taking on this new technological advancement and say, okay, when do I know I'm ready for this? What would you suggest to customers?
I mean, obviously, there are companies that are more mature in data and AI space. There are companies that are less mature. So it will depend on where they are in that journey. And do they have internal capabilities as well, or do they need to invite external people to help them with this? Uh, I think first thing first should be the strategy. Like you need to spend a bit of time thinking, where the company, like what AI means for your company. Where are the places where you should be implementing? Where are the places where you should not be implementing AI? Like what effect AI has on your business? Is it a crucial piece, or it's nice to have? Maybe it's a small productivity gains you can get from it, and then depending on that, I think you're right. You need to start small. Like if you haven't done this before, there's no point in going after like a big fish and like try to automate like a bigger chunk of your business processes, just because most likely you're not gonna succeed that fast. If you haven't done that before, you need to start small. Like identify what are these business processes that can be automated with AI, and the rule of thumb is that it's what we discussed. Like if it's documented, if it's more or less straightforward, then it can be automated. Again, if it has something to do with like document processes or like digital systems, take something from here, transform it, put it there, analyze it a bit, write some report, then it's a pretty good candidate. And you can start with these well-defined things and start freeing up your existing employees from this mundane routine tasks, and then give them something a bit more complex to handle. And then steadily and slowly, you will kind of start introducing AI to more complex processes.
Yeah, and I think also it gives you that opportunity to, be able to manage your risk as an organization. So, by starting small, you can contain and manage and understand that risk and the risk profile that you have within the organization. We've spoken before about the outputs of your AI solution are still your responsibility as an organization. So, the protection of your PII and customers' PII, that's still your responsibility. And so if there's any risk in there with the models that you're deploying, that's down to you to be able to control and manage. And, one of the other things we're talking about is that, the pace of change in AI capabilities and the tools that are out there, and it's happening so quick and moving on so quick. And so for a large enterprise organization that's perhaps a little bit slower to move, is if you undertake something that's too big all at once, you've got to balance that risk off against, by the time you finished it, it's already changed and become obsolete, and you're left paying quite a big bill. So if you've got these smaller chunks, they're more easily able to swap them out. But we were obviously having the discussion earlier as well, is actually, even for larger, slower organizations, they've got to find ways to be able to adapt more quickly and jump on some of these capabilities. Otherwise they are going to get left behind.
And of course, there are things that are way easier. Like another example to like a deep research thing is coding with AI. Like right now, I think every organization should enable and embrace all these coding tools that just kind of speed up your work as an engineer. So this can be a pretty fast thing to adopt. You still need to think about like how to do this in a more secure way, like where your code is not exposed, or still put some guardrails. But this is like much easier thing and might have a lot of impact on the organization just because you can ship new features much faster and things like that.
Yeah, and I think just to follow on from that as well, again, from a smaller business point of view, like I say, it's given smaller businesses access to resources that were previously available to only to larger enterprise, for example. So, like say, you can have these agents as employees. You can use the tools for more quickly developing coding and everything at scale from that point of view. And then I think from a CTO's or chief AI officer's point of view within an enterprise organization, actually his challenges are not um, necessarily how to use the tools, but actually how to integrate them more safely into those processes, as you're saying. So, different perspectives as to whether you're a large enterprise or a smaller business there as well, as to how you can still get value from deployment of these tools.
I think that's important to take note of now. Is we've obviously discussed what it is and how it's put together, and specifically how we should leverage it. I think one of the things a lot of customers or organizations are concerned about is, why should I actually adopt this? What difference does this make, and how will this improve my value or ROI or the revenue and time? Really, what other things do you think are important in this sense?
Um, Again, for every organization, it's going to be something slightly different, probably. That's why you need to start with strategy and like looking at your business holistically, looking at basically capabilities of AI systems, like all these AI agents that exist right now, and like how does it map to your business. There's obviously a lot of like cost saving opportunities. If you look at customer support, it's pretty well disrupted these days with all the AI tools. Like you can scale much faster without a need to scale your customer support rapidly. Same with like coding and engineering can be much more efficient, so you can actually deliver more features, so your customers are getting much better treatment, much better product because you're shipping rapidly instead of like doing 6 months as roadmaps. Now you can probably squeeze that into 2 months or something. So that's something that can have a tremendous effect on your top line or bottom line. But all the other processes where you have like a lot of human in the loop, and it takes a lot of time to review something. If you think about KYC, KYB processes in banks where someone looks at documents and compares them. Previously, it could have taken days. Now it can take a couple minutes to do so. Again, every business has some of their own things. You just need to understand the limitations of AI, because it's not a magic pill. It's not going to solve all your pain points right now. You need to be realistic, and that's why I think the main point is you need to start small, because when you kind of work more and more with all the available tools, AI agents, solutions in the AI space, you learn the limitations. So you build kind of your own understanding of like where it's applicable and where it's not applicable. You test them out. You see, because again, there might be some places where you want to implement AI and it seems like AI is a great fit, but then you test it on your data and you see that the level of hallucinations or mistakes is not acceptable, just because it's such a critical business process. So I think the trial and error here is inevitable. You need to test out things, and you need to look at your business holistically. Look at the AI capabilities to understand what are the ROIs that you will
Yeah, and I think that's again really important point. Thinking about the costs, as you're saying, like we're looking at things either that are going to generate more value in terms of revenue or reduce overheads and get cost savings. I think what we have to be aware of is the risks. So, the risks of going into perhaps a big project, we call it the AI iceberg, where companies are trying to replicate the kind of success bit of AI deployments that they've seen competitors doing and things like that. But there's been a lot of work that's gone in kind of under the surface that the other companies have perhaps not gone through, so they're not getting the value from it. And the risk of that is that you've deployed what can be a potentially expensive AI solution, and then you're not getting the ROI or the expected returns or the expected results. So, by going through that structured process of documenting what it is that you want to do, what is it that you want to achieve, the old school business cases that, we used to go through for kind of big enterprise projects, making sure that you have you have that clear view of what you want to achieve, and then being able to get it like that, because again the costs can be counterintuitive, and we're seeing as well the term AI slop, where yes, we've got the shiny new tool and I can use it to generate something, but if I get it wrong, it can actually take me longer than if I did it manually. So they're the things you've got to be able to watch out for, because when we deploy it in the right area, those productivity gains are enormous and will be too big for businesses to ignore and leave behind. We've got to manage the risks of getting it wrong, and like I say, where that could actually end up costing us more. And even in some cases, what is the right solution? AI is a tool. We have to deploy it in the right areas for the right things. In some cases, traditional tools may still be able to give us a more effective outcome for perhaps a fraction of the cost. I'm sure in those cases, we will see AI kind of continue to progress and develop into those areas in the future. But right now, they're the sorts of things that organizations need to be aware of, and at least managing and considering in those when looking for those opportunities to deploy AI. Where is it going to give you your biggest bang for your buck? And I don't think enough kind of businesses are going through those steps to consider that at the moment.
So I think that's actually the perfect time for us to do what we do every week on this podcast. It's a section we call Habibi Fix This. So you've just mentioned businesses don't know where to start. So we'll set a challenge. I need you guys each to complete this. Normally we do a 60-second timer, but this is a little bit more complicated of a section. So we'll aim for about 2 minutes. So here it is. Right. You dropped into a mid-sized logistics company. Data is siloed, they make slow decisions, there's manual workflows everywhere. So in under 2 minutes, how would you pilot an agentic AI solution? What do you automate? What do you augment? How do you redesign? What do you do first and why? Vitalii, I think we should start with you.
So I think first thing that I would do is probably make sure that we enable access to all these tools for all the employees. So like everyone has access to all the LLM models, so they can start leveraging this on a daily basis when it comes to maybe some invoice processing or things like that, as a quick productivity gain. But then after that, I'll still start over with the foundation. So we'll make sure that we're running on a cloud, because I've seen many, logistic companies that are still having a lot of on-prem stuff that is inefficient. So I would make sure that we start building the data layer and the application layer in the cloud, and then kind of start looking at these business processes they have, something probably to do with procurement and contract management and invoices. Like look at these business processes and start taking like smaller parts of it and automating that. I think that's something that I would do.
Yeah, very good. And I think for mine then, I think if we were looking at it, we'd start looking at, okay, what are those business processes, and documenting where we've got the business processes. Um, where is the highest cost in those business processes, and then focusing on the data flows around that. Is it bringing it into a central point, and then we can go through the steps of understanding our costs, understanding and mapping the business case and data flows, and then start to defining what outcomes we want. So for something like this, we probably want to start improving time to complete the process, and reduction in overall cost of the process as well. Um, Once we have that in place, we can start deploying the solution, and then monitoring that process through. So the idea is that we take out a lot of the manual handling. We've removed the data silos. We have then the solution in place that is taking that as far as possible. But we are monitoring that process to optimize on the results, and also making sure that we're flagging any discrepancies for kind of human review as well. And I think if we're looking at that from a logistics point of view, that should translate to yeah, lower cost and hopefully quicker deliveries, if we're looking at something like that as well.
There's actually a common trend that you both have mentioned here. It seems like we always have to start at the data. And I think what companies need to realize is that there's a risk that if all of my foundations aren't sorted, I don't have my data flows, my processes aren't mapped, my data isn't clean and siloed, these things are going to fail. So I guess it boils us down to the end of the discussion and saying, we've got to start at the bottom, garbage in, garbage out. But I think if we can really nail when and why we should put in agentic AI, I think it'll drive us to a future where we can actually say, this is good value.
And I think that's where having good governance processes in place for your data management and data operations, lend themselves really well then to, being able to develop your AI processes. Understanding the data that you have, where it is not only good from a governance and compliance point of view. It's also great from then being able to understand any data quality challenges that you might have, how you can iron out some of those inefficiencies, but then also feed your kind of AI use cases and better lend themselves to those as well. So by putting these steps in place, you're getting an organizational win, like say when you pick the right use case for it as well.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think you should start with the basics. Like sometimes it's very appealing to just jump to the new shiny thing, but you need to do the groundwork in order for this agentic AI to work actually and deliver value.
Okay, so I think today we've explored how agentic AI will move forward and beyond reactive models. So for your guys' opinion, what do you think have been the key takeaways today that our listeners would be able to take from listening to us discuss this
I
today?
mean, what we just said, like you need to start with the basic. You need to start with like a great foundation when it comes to your data. In some cases, there are quick wins that can unlock the productivity, as we talked about, the kind of deep research agents or coding agents that you can probably start rolling out ASAP. But again, as a large organization, you still need to think a bit more about the privacy, data residency, like some security challenges that might appear. It's much easier for smaller companies. It's always great to start with a strategy, like look holistically at the capabilities of AI models and then your business and see how does it match. What I also like to tell a lot of people that the best source of ideas is your own employees in a large organization. So your employees know exactly where the inefficiencies are and like what processes can be automated. So kind of surveying and talking to teams and then putting that into some sort of like a strategy document is probably the best way to move forward.
I think that's actually a really good point as well. And having your, when you're looking at having your data stewards, operating with your DMO, your data management office, and they understand the business processes. So when you're working with them and you're trying to create this framework as an organization to move forward, again, they can be your best source of ideas where the pain points are. And so that's going to give you a good starting point of what sort of areas you can start thinking about for deploying AI processes in your organization. But then I think once you have those ideas, it's important to go through and make sure you've done the assessments. Is this the right tool for the job? Are we going to get the value we expect? What controls and governance can we put in place? What are the data requirements, and then the implications for that? And I think, thinking more about the risks of this, not just from a data point of view, but also ROI point of view, like what is my expenditure versus what are my returns going to be, and are there other solutions that can potentially get to the same outcome for a lot less? Does it matter? So if you go through these steps, you're going to be sure that you have the right solution in the right place to deliver the biggest amount of value for the organization.
I think my key takeaway from this actually is we're moving as a culture into an AI for all kind of state, whereby we don't have to be a large organization to actually deliver these large models or integrate them into business. I think smaller businesses can actually benefit from this as well, as long as they follow those same steps, because I think all of these steps we're taking, from foundational processes, data governance, being compliant, getting things ready, and then optimizing these micro processes into larger business processes, maybe the whole mesh architecture. I think any business might actually be able to benefit this, no matter your scale or size. So,
yeah.
All right.
Totally.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for listening. That's it for the episode of It's Data, Habibi. We're switching things up today. No teasers, no clues. So stick around for the next episode on AI that pushes beyond the buzzwords. In the meantime, catch us on Spotify, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and we'll leave the links for you to listen down below. Thank you.